Hi everyone, this is Rob, and I'm an Agile coach with Clearly Agile down in Tampa, Florida. Today I wanted to talk to you about remote teams. Right now, many teams across the country are suddenly going remote, and I figured I'd share 3 simple tips that I look at in my career when I'm standing up remote teams. Right, and I hope these help you be successful as we navigate these waters ahead. So the first tip is whenever we stand up a remote team, or I stand up a remote team, I always put remote as the team's co-location space. If you've been working in any sort of an Agile environment, you will hear a lot of coaches, a lot of people talking about how we want to focus on co-locating the teams in the same area. When you have one person remote, or you have all your team members remote, then that remote is the hub of co-location for your team. Now, it doesn't make it impossible, but it does mean that you need to focus on a couple of special considerations to make sure a remote team is going to be successful. The first one is tooling, right? Teams are going to need access to backlogs, they're going to need access to boards, and we want to make sure that there's adequate digital tools for running the mechanics of the team that are in place, right? Does everybody have access to it? Do we have the queries right for the board? Is there a process and agreement on the teams on how those items and status are going to move? Right. The second thing around co-location is the team is going to need space to collaborate, right? So is there video collaboration tools in place and supporting tools such as whiteboarding or shared documents in place that allow the team to effectively get together and collaborate and interact as efficiently as possible every time they get together? The last one is messaging structures, so tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams. Right? So not only do you need team rooms where teams can get together as a team and communicate with each other, but you also have to look at the culture of your organization. Are we creating spaces, now that everyone is remote, for teams to get together and interact socially with each other, such as water core or lounge, right? That happened in an office when you guys were working together, and that's going to happen online. So the more we can do to create spaces, it'll help bring a sense of normalcy and also keep a sense of the culture that you had in transferring that onto an online space. The second tip, and I wanted to focus on this one a little bit more, is the need for redoing or doing, if you haven't done one already, team working agreements. Now, your teams that are remote may be the same faces, it might be the same team, they may already be used to working together. But if they were co-located, or just even partially co-located, what has happened is all their norms that they had, operating norms that they had, were suddenly taken away. And that team now needs to build new ones, right? So whether we move a team from co-located to remote, or we're standing up brand new remote teams, it is well worth the time and effort to take that short pause and get the team together and come up with a working agreement. Now, working agreements for remote teams are very similar to working agreements for regular teams, except for a couple of special considerations. Right? The first one is the team really needs to focus on events, right? What are the events that we're going to run? What's the schedule on those events we're going to run? What is the tooling and collaboration mechanisms that we're going to run? And how are people, and what is the expectation for attending, right? The team just needs to spend a little extra diligence making sure that those expectations are ironed out in advance. The big one for me is the second sub-tip under here, which is when teams are working together in a remote environment, it's a really good idea to establish common working hours where the team is online on their Zoom or their team space on camera, where they have access to each other freely, right? They can see each other working, they're on camera, they have the access to communicate freely with each other, the same way as if they were sitting in a team bullpen or team working space inside the office. Right? It doesn't mean that they have to be on camera 8 hours a day, but the team should establish a norm for a set number of working hours where they are together. The opposite of that is the team's going to need quiet hours, right? Especially when working remotely, you can't be on video all the time. It's distracting, right? To do that 100% of the time. So where the team is establishing working hours where everyone is together, the team should also establish set hours where they can go and do some quiet time to actually get work done. The thing to consider on that one is when you have that set up, how is the team, if they need somebody, what are the rules of engagement for asking somebody for help? Is it using messaging? Is it over email? When somebody does that, what's the expected turnaround time to reply, right? We don't want to start relentlessly shoulder tapping during people for things during those quiet hours, but we do want to make sure the team understands if you need somebody, you can get help and how to go about doing it. The last tip I wanted to talk or bring up is whenever we spin up a remote team, right, we usually come up with tools that teams will start to use first, right? We give them video conferencing, we give them ALM tools, we might even give them digital whiteboarding or online shared office documents. When that happens, if those tools are not sufficient for how the team needs to use them, the team will start to go a little bit rogue and start to find ways around those established things. And it's a really good idea to spend a little bit of time on, in the retrospective, to focus on asking the team, how are the tools and things and policies that we have in place for working remotely, are they effective, right? Is the team looking to experiment with something? Is there something that's not working, right? A lot of times those well-intended tools can sometimes cause bottlenecks and slowdowns on the team. But if we take a moment and we make it a priority when we're doing our retrospectives, then we'll start to bubble up those actual impediments that teams are having and give them the ability to experiment or offer them alternates to try to see if we can make that more efficient, right? So the more we focus on improving the remote work environment, the more successful teams are going to have. So that's all I have for today. Like I said, 3 simple tips that you can use when forming remote teams. There's a lot of other stuff that we can go into detail, but wanted to keep it simple for today. So take care, and we'll talk to you soon.